Hi everyone, I'm Hugo Liu. I'm the CEO of Orchestra, the best-in-class data pipeline management platform. And today we're going to take a look at how you can leverage LLMs from within Snowflake Cortex. So LLMs are awesome, right? They help us do things like easily get sentiment from pieces of text, but also summarize things, them concisely, and return values. So essentially getting structured data from unstructured sources. Now, obviously, as data professionals, a lot of us use environments like data warehouses. And within that, there's tabular data. However, how we use LLMs in terms of these tabular data isn't always obvious. So if I go into Snowflake and take a look at this table, it's not immediately obvious what I do with all of this tabular data. It's like, should you send this entire blob of data to an LLM? Probably not, because that obviously has security issues and context length issues. Perhaps you should iterate through each value in this table. Again, this would be an incredibly inefficient way to leverage LLMs. Fortunately, within Snowflake Cortex, you can access basic LLM functionality from within your data warehouse. So you don't have to worry about some of these, security or efficiency issues. Let's dive into how. So firstly, let's take a look at what Snowflake offers. You can see here, there's the complete function, which takes a prompt and returns a response. This is probably the most versatile one because you can essentially use it to get, it's very similar to an OpenAI prompt, just like you'd see on ChatGPT. There are a couple of options for creating vector embeddings if you're thinking about training your own LLMs. And then you've also got ones like question answer, getting sentiment, summarize, and translate, which is obviously pretty cool. Now, setting this up in Snowflake Cortex requires a bit of know-how, so let's go and see how we do that. So within Snowflake Cortex, you need to create a special role that's called a database role. In this case, it's the Snowflake Cortex user. So the first thing I would do is show grants on the database role. And here we can see that we've got ownership applied to, well, actually nothing in this case. You should ideally see the role and the grantee name for the role you're going to use. And we're going to set that up in a second. So the first thing to do is to grant this database role to a new Cortex user role. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. So you would do this in account admin. The next thing to do would be to grant this role to your user. So that's me. Now, when we show grants on database role snowflake.cortex user, you'll see that we've got usage here, so we'll be able to sort of crack on. Ideally, I think this should say ownership, but for the purposes of this demo, it won't really matter. So with a very basic example, this is the structure. So in the case of accessing the complete function, you reference the function by doing a select snowflake.cortex.complete, just like, you would say select concat, so function, and then, some string with some other stuff. The first thing you'll notice is that there are two parameters that this function takes. The first is the model name. So in this case, we're using Snowflake Arctic, but they have a wide range of models you can access, such as Mistral Large, Llama, and some other smaller models like Gamma 7b. So you can use the right model for the right task. The second thing, of course, in this case is the prompt. So here we're looking at what are large language models. This is going to give us an output that is a brief explanation of that. You can also see here that we've got the summarize function. In here, you could have something like call notes or maybe an email, and this would give you a really handy summary of something. The third one we're going to look at is translate. So translate actually takes a few other parameters, which is pretty cool. So we've got the text, and then we have the source language and the target language. So let's go ahead and fill that out. you'll notice that translate doesn't actually require a model because Snowflake says that for you. The source language, of course, is English. And the cool thing is you can do things which would be really hard to translate to, like Chinese. And it's literally that simple. So if you're a large organization where you have to do stuff in a really multi-tenanted fashion, where you need to translate stuff, very straightforward. The final thing, of course, is sentiment. And sentiment is even simpler. We can see you literally just have to put the text in. So this would be something like, this meal was delicious, thanks to the chef. Now, to our initial example, it's not super helpful because what we really want to do is work out how we can select from all of these results and apply an LLM to them. Now, fortunately, it's really simple. So in the case of Snowflake, it's just a question of inserting columns into the Snowflake Cortex function. So in this example, we're selecting from the customers table. And you can see we're leveraging the complete function using Snowflake Arctic. And the prompt is going to be, get me the full title based on the following. So the salutation, the first name, and the last name. Now, this is pretty simple, right? I can simulate what this function would look like by simply doing a concatenation statement. So running this ML function looks like this. You can see we've got the title from there, super easy. And that's not a huge, big burden for us. However, you can imagine scenarios where, you were maybe having to do some incredibly complex regex to get some structured data from something unstructured. And, you can kind of illustrate this a bit with accessing the domain from an email address. So in this case, you'd say snowflake.cortex.complete, snowflake arctic, and then, you just concatenate the prompt with the email address. So super simple. On the other hand, if you look at how we do this before, it's relatively complicated formula, right? You've got 3 functions in there. There's some weird syntax. You got to replace some stuff, but you get the right result. So I guess there are 2 points here I'm trying to illustrate. The first is that using LLM functions in Snowflake with tabular data is really, really easy. And then the second is that it can make things which are really quite complicated to do very, very simple. So yeah, awesome. In these videos, you learned how to use LLM functions within the Snowflake Cloud Data Warehouse. We've seen that as long as you can set it up properly, there are lots of things you can unlock. At the one end of the sort of LLM complexity, it's really easy to make tiresome tasks like having to write regex or string parsing a lot easier. On the other, you can kind of use LLMs to do whatever you want. So you can summarize enormous data points like call notes into structured pieces of information. So if you've got any questions, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, I hope you have a great time using LLMs.